We'll just wait for 5 more minutes and then we'll begin. Before we begin, I hope everyone is in a comfortable place where you will get a little bit of silence and where you won't be disturbed, at least for the next around 15 minutes. So, if you would like to take the time, we have 1 more minute to find such a place. Okay, I think we can start. So, those who are new here, just a brief. So, this is Sundays with Nivam. Nivam is a school which follows semi-alternative education. We run on the basis of Sri Aurobindo's integral education. We are based in Amravati, and since we have journeyed from a conventional school to a semi-alternative, and quite soon we'll be um, alternative. So this what we share from every Sunday is our journey through this whole process, and yeah, so it becomes easier for anyone who is looking into something like this, who would like to have a more meaningful education at home, in their schools, and so on. So the last time we had discussed on inquiry-based learning, and uh, there were quite a few suggestions as to how inquiry works. So although we did discuss a couple of short examples the last time, I thought it would be interesting to see how self-inquiry works, so that you experience inquiry, and then after that you may be able to replicate that experience for your children, for the classes that you are in. Um, so we'll begin with this short exercise. So as I said, we'll need a comfortable position and a place where you won't be disturbed for the next 15 minutes. Once you have found the place, keep a loose focus in front of you. It can be at eye level, above eye level, below eye level. And while you are doing this, take a few deep breaths. Just letting your mind go, not controlling anything, just loosely looking into the distance. And as you grow more comfortable, with the last exhale, slowly close your eyes. Watch the air as you inhale and as you exhale. Feel it on your upper lip as you inhale, touching your nostrils, down the neck, and filling your chest. And again, as you exhale, feel everywhere that it touches inside of you. Let the breath be natural. While one may be a deep breath, the other could be shallow. Notice how each breath feels. The sensations that each breath brings with it, and the sensations as each breath leaves. Observe the changes in your breath. Is it warm? Is it cool? If it is warm, where do you feel the warmth? If it is cool, where do you feel cool? As you observe this, notice how your observations are growing more sensitive, more delicate, more intricate. You may begin to feel some itching, some tickling, some pulsing sensations, and so on. Observe them without reacting. Observe how each sensation comes and goes. As you watch these sensations, observe how each of them have several parts that itching is made up of different sensations. Tickling has several sensations inside it. The rise and fall of the pulsing sensations, and everything else that you feel. Gradually let this sense of awareness travel from your nose to your mouth, down to your neck, and shoulders. Let them travel down your hands till your fingertips and down your chest, belly, your thighs, knees, heels, and to the tip of your toes. As you bring your awareness to your legs, observe the weight of your body resting on them. As you feel the weight, become aware of your surroundings and observe the sounds around you. Listening, not reaching, letting the sounds come to you. Slowly move your fingers and wiggle your toes as you become aware of your body once again. Take a few deep breaths growing more aware of your surroundings. And with the last exhale, gradually open your eyes. Good morning, everyone. So, this is going to be an interactive session since since we are trying to have a shared inquiry and to experience what inquiry feels like for us. And as we delve into inquiry, we'll begin to understand um, how we can create that experience for children, for students, and so on. So, how many of you have a reasonable understanding of inquiry? How many of you have heard the word, and how many of you have read about it at least a little bit? Okay, all right. So, yes, we did cover it in the last session. You may also share what your understanding is on even hearing the word, so to speak. If you have not read about it, what do you understand it when you hear the word inquiry? To know about something, asking information, collecting information, or trying to know about something in detail. Okay, so let's look at it from what we did right now. Um, when you did this exercise, how did you feel? What was your experience while doing this? If you want to type it, that is fine. If you want to unmute yourself and voice it out, you can do the same. How many of you have tried or experienced something like this before, which we just did in the initial 15-20 minutes?
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, I have done, I would have done a similar exercise in some yoga classes.
Okay.
So it's nice. It's kind of like firing your breath only. If you're enjoying something else, but closely watching your breath is an experience in itself.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was nice. It's a calming kind of thing.
Okay. So, calming is one experience that you had from this. I became aware of the surroundings and connected it with the birds tweeting outside. Okay. So in this case, did it? What did it feel like? Did you Were you already aware of the birds chirping around you, or um, and it grew more detailed, or it was going on around you, but your awareness wasn't actively engaged in it, and suddenly it came into view? What was the shift from before this and after this? Okay, so the awareness was magnified. All right. What else? What else did you feel? What else did you experience? Mm-hmm. So you grew more aware of the physical sensations throughout your body and no distraction. Okay. Yes. So which brings us to another question. How many of you were extremely distracted and couldn't do this at all? Hmm. So most of you have experienced this while doing yoga or at the end of yoga. Okay. So this was one look at self inquiry, and if something like this is done after, say, a games period or something like that, where you're physically involved, you can try it with yourself. You can try it with children. You can try it with your students. Um, so this experience that you feel, or this experience that you go through, if you try doing the same thing after every activity, then you have a different experience every time. It took some time to settle in, but then I was into the meditation. Okay. Interestingly, the word meditation is not what we normally understand. What do we think about when we hear the word meditation? What is it supposed to be, according to whatever we have heard, according to whatever we have learned? Okay, peace of mind, self awareness. All right. So, if you remember in all the previous sessions, every now and then I speak about how it is very important to look at the etymology of words, the source, the origin of words. And I did that with meditation a few years back. And I came to know that meditation comes from meditari, which is a Greek word for thinking. So while we often talk about meditation as a thoughtless state, um, to allow your mind to take a back seat and observe. Yes. So while we quite often are told that meditation is basically a thoughtless state, it's a state where there are no thoughts. Um, the word meditation, on the other hand, talks about being able to think in a very complacent manner, complacency. So, yes, this is more or less on the lines of that, taking a back seat and observing our thoughts. So, it's not about having a thoughtless state or not thinking or going into a thoughtless state. It is more or less thinking complacently, thinking without reacting to it, thinking without responding to it, um, and not letting those thoughts affect you, or not getting affected by those thoughts. Because if you try to not let it affect you, then it affects you more. So, um, that is the meaning of the word meditation. or the source of the word meditation. What we usually do is what we refer to as dhyana. So, dhyan means concentration, it means focus, but on a very mindful level, on a very um, internal level. So this is about this experience. Now, if you, as I said, if you do this with after physical activities or something like that, you draw the awareness to what you have done. If there are, if you are involved in something that involves a lot of sensations, like say cooking or art or anywhere, like painting a room, because even painting a room has so many colors and it has so many textures and the smell of the paint and everything. So after you do something like that and then you do something like this, um, the experience will be a lot different. So if you undergo this experience, then you can inquire into each and everything that is being felt by you, being experienced by you, and at the same time the whole connection. Because right now we were focusing too much on the breath, and I was getting giving very consistent instructions. But imagine if we do this without instructions. So if we do this without instructions, there are lots of gaps. So in this gap, um, we tend to get distracted, we tend to think about things, we tend to lose focus. One moment we are focusing on our breath, and the next moment we are thinking about I don't know, playing lagori with friends in childhood or something like that. So our mind keeps wandering. And there's one very nice line by Kabir on this. So he says, "Man ke bail surata pohave, रस्सी लगाओ गुरु ज्ञान की मनवा." So our mind keeps wandering, we keep getting distracted, and it is the guru's work to gently place the rope on that mind and bring it back to its place. So in this case we are trying to do it by ourselves, or sometimes we need some instructions in doing so. So this was one thing. Now the next part of this, I wanted to go through with a story. So if we read a story and inquire through it, um, maybe we can see how we can take it to the class. Actually, I can leave it up to you. Would you want me to go into a story, or should we explore some concept in say CBSE or something? Okay, so I have a story which is called "The Egg" by Andy Weir. Um, yeah, so this is a story. We can either inquire through the story, so that will be kind of like a language inquiry, or we can go through some, say, some chapter in CBSE or something. So, what do you feel we should do? So if we go through the story, that would be more like a language inquiry, and if we go through any other chapter, it will be more like a scientific inquiry or something. Okay. All right. So I think we'll go ahead with the story because, contrary to popular belief, inquiry, once you understand how it works, once you feel it, experience it, it's much easier to take into the classroom. Um, in science or in mathematics or in any other subject like history or geography, but in language it is a bit difficult because, you'll see, like when we start talking about it, you'll uh, gain an outlook. So we'll go ahead with the story. So Andy Weir is the author of a very profound book called The Martian, which was turned into a movie recently, and it, if I'm not wrong, I think it even won an Oscar or something like that. So it's about a person, a scientist who gets stranded on Mars, and he develops his own ecosystem, like gardening, farming, and everything. He begins there, and he survives till the time somebody comes to pick him back. This one is slightly different. So this one is called an egg. The egg. So I'll just read through it once. I'll read through it maybe page by page, and then we can talk about it. You were on your way home when you died. It was a car accident. Nothing particularly remarkable, but fatal nonetheless. You left behind a wife and two children. It was a painless death. The EMTs tried their best to save you, but to no avail. Your body was so utterly shattered, you were better off. Trust me. And that's when you met me. What what happened? You asked. Where am I? You died, I said, matter of factly. No point in mincing words. There was a truck and it was skidding. Yup, I said. I died. Yup. But don't feel bad about it. Everyone dies, I said. You looked around. There was nothingness. Just you and me. What is this place? You asked. Is this the afterlife? More or less, I said. Are you God? I asked. You asked. Yep, I replied. I'm God. My kids, my wife, you said. What about them? Will they be alright? That's what I like to see, I said. You just died, and your main concern is for your family. That's good stuff right there. You looked at me with fascination. To you, I didn't look like God. I just looked like some man, or possibly a woman. Some vague authority figure, maybe. More of a grammar school teacher than the Almighty. Don't worry, I said. They'll be fine. Your kids will remember you as perfect in every way. They didn't have time to grow contempt for you. Your wife will cry on the outside, but will be secretly relieved. To be fair, your marriage was falling apart. If it's any consolation, she'll feel very guilty for feeling relieved. Oh, you said, So what happens now? Do I go to heaven or hell or something? Neither, I said. You will be reincarnated. Ah, you said. So the Hindus were right. So this is just the first part of it. There are a couple more parts. Um, so what thoughts did this bring to you? What were you thinking about right now? What difference do you observe between the two people that are conversing here, who are conversing here?
Here, God is confident, and the person who died is anxious,
Hmm.
a little bit worried.
Yes, a little bit
But
worried.
yeah,
And
and it also gives us an imagination. Means I started imagining myself over here. If
hmm,
I would have a conversation with God like this,
okay. So let's look a bit into it again. If you feel like you were in that place, first of all, how many of you resonate with that? How many of you feel that you are in that place? While reading this, how many of you imagined yourself to be in that position? Mm-hmm. Okay. So, what makes you feel that while reading, um, why do you think you felt that you were the person who reached there? Did you do it actively, or did you just feel that, oh, this is, this is what is happening right now? Or did you think about it? Okay, this is the story, and this is the character, and let's put ourselves in this character and let's see how I react. Or was it a bit more natural than that? It happens passively. Mm-hmm. It happens very naturally. Okay. So if you were in that situation, how similar or how different would your questions and your responses and your reactions be to a situation like this? Yes, depends on our emotional connect. Okay. So stepping into that zone, um, if we look at the questions, if we look at the reactions, if we look at the way the conversation is going, how many of us feel we would have responded in a very similar way? We would have probably asked the same questions: what happened to my family? Or, what happened, first of all, and what is going to happen now? Now that I'm dead, what am I supposed to do now? Will we have the same questions, or will we have some other questions? Can you think of questions you would ask as soon as you met somebody like this? Okay, you can empathize with the character while reading. So you can put yourself in their shoes and you can understand how they feel right now and feel what they feel right now. Okay, so maybe here we can just think of the questions that we would ask in this situation. You can share it, you may not share it, it's up to you. But just think of at least a couple of questions that you would ask if you were in this situation. Keep in mind that this has happened suddenly. It is something that it just happened. Like you're not prepared for it. So you have to think from that way, from that direction. We'll give that a minute and then we'll move on to the next page. Okay. So I hope you have at least put down or thought of a couple of questions. Moving on to the next page. So he asks, or he states that, oh, so the Hindus were right because Hindus believe in reincarnation. All religions are right in their own way, I said. Walk with me. You followed along as we strode through the void. Where are we going? Nowhere in particular, I said. It's just nice to walk while we talk. So, what's the point then? You ask. When I get reborn, I'll just be a blank slate, right? A baby. So, all my experiences and everything I did in this life won't matter. Not so, I said. You have within you all the knowledge and experiences of all your past lives. You just don't remember them right now. I stopped walking and took you by the shoulders. Your soul is more magnificent, beautiful, and gigantic than you can possibly imagine. A human mind can only contain a tiny fraction of what you are. It's like sticking your finger in a glass of water to see if it is hot or cold. You put a tiny part of yourself into the vessel, and then when you bring it back out, you have gained all the experiences it had. You've been in a human for the last 48 years, so you haven't stretched out yet and felt the rest of your immense consciousness. If we hung out here for long enough, you'd start remembering everything. But there's no point to doing that between each life. How many times have I been reincarnated then? Oh, lots. Lots and lots. And into lots of different lives, I said. This time around, you will be a Chinese peasant girl in 540 AD. Wait, what? You stammered. You're sending me back in time? Well, I guess technically, time as you know it only exists in your universe. Things are different where I come from. Where you are from? You said. Oh, sure, I explained. I come from somewhere else. And there are others like me. I know you will want to know what it is like there, but honestly, you wouldn't understand. Oh, you said, a little let down. But wait, if I get reincarnated to other places in time, I could have reincarnated with myself. I could have interacted with myself at some point. Sure, happens all the time. And with both lives. Only aware of their own lifespan. You don't even know it's happening. So, what's the point of it all? Seriously, I asked. Seriously, you are asking me for the meaning of life? Isn't that a little stereotypical? Well, it's a reasonable question, you persisted. What questions does this part bring out in you? Where do we come from? Okay. What do you think the narrator is feeling when he asks, "Your soul is more magnificent, beautiful, and gigantic than you can possibly imagine"? What do you think is the narrator feeling? Or in this case, as we say, what do you think the God is feeling? Okay, a pious soul. Have we ever held anyone by both shoulders when we talk to that person or ask that person anything? And if yes, then what were we feeling when we did that? Holding somebody else by the shoulders, like both shoulders. Compassion, yes, very good. Proud of that person, okay. All right, so very powerful feelings. Do we have any more answers? When you want to get their attention empathetically, okay. Oh, emphatically, okay. You hold by both shoulders. So you are when you want to get somebody's attention and you want to make a point, like draw somebody's attention specifically to something that you feel that the person is missing out. Yes, so that is happening here. In a negative way also, if you are dominating someone, yes, that is also possible. Okay, so we have had a few answers. Let's bring in a few more questions. So when you read this about each human life is just a finger dipped in water, how does it make you feel? How does it? What thoughts is it bringing to your mind?
Sir, just repeat what you asked just now.
Yeah. So I asked when you read about that part about each human life is basically like a finger being dipped in water. What thoughts does it bring to you, or what questions does it bring to you? So everything that the finger experiences is just one lifetime, or whatever you experience in your entire lifetime is just that one sensation of the finger being dipped in water. So you are not the whole person, you are just that finger. And your entire lifetime is just that incident of it being dipped in water. Okay? That life is much more vast than we can imagine. What else? Does it bring you any questions? One life is just a single star on the entire sky. Okay. Why do you think he says that there is no point in doing that between each life? Because even if we read a book, even if we study something, with every chapter we do a lot of question answers, we do a lot of revision, we do all these things, and then we move on to the next chapter. So here, why does he say, ke, no, no, you don't need to, experience that whole immense consciousness that you are yourself. Instead of that, it is better if you just move on to the next life. Why does he say there is no point to doing that between each life?
I think so. He might be thinking here that life should, if the things are going to be changing, so it should be changing in the life only. Why a stoppage and then again a start, restart, then again a stop and then again a restart?
Okay. But if you see in the previous statement, he says if we hung out here for long enough. Long enough means just a little bit more. Also, like it can be just a little more, and um, as you stay there, and gradually your awareness grows, and you become aware of everything that has happened. Um, or maybe even a little bit. So, why is there no point? Like, what is the aspect? What is going to happen in the next life, which will make all this obsolete? So, even if you stayed long enough, even if you did feel the immense consciousness that is around you, and then if you get reincarnated, um, what is going to happen in that reincarnation which makes this experience of the immenseness obsolete, pointless? Can you see this part?
Yeah, it simply says that whatever consciousness, till whatever level of consciousness I have been in one life is of no use to the other life, because again the other life will start from the 0 point, zero
Hmm.
level. So again I have to go to that conscious level. So he's asking why you are doing it again and again, the same thing.
Hmm. So then, how does he respond, or what response does he get? So, who is it pointless for? Is it pointless for the person who has come, who has arrived, or is it pointless for the consciousness?
It is pointless for the person who has arrived, because the consciousness knows that what till what level, or God knows what till what level he had come to.
Hmm. So, the moment there is reincarnation, the moment there is rebirth, everything will be a blank slate, everything will be forgotten. So, once again, the person has to start anew. And if that person has to live another life, start anew, then what is the point in staying back and remembering? Because that is already there with the consciousness. But for the human being who is going to be born again, it will be a blank slate.
Actually, this is very high level of spirituality and means it's related directly to God. We don't know what God thinks of, and the incarnation or the rebirth are done in that level only, where you leave one part, and from there, God knows now where you have to be laid down again on earth. So He only knows that the person or means the life or the person doesn't know from where I have come and now where I'm going. That is the only soul part.
Hmm.
The soul, how much the soul has grown in one life and now where it has to go in the other life.
Okay, so let's look at where it is going. We'll move on to the next page. I looked you in the eye. The meaning of life, the reason I made this whole universe, is for you to mature. You mean mankind, right? You want us to mature. No, just you. I made this whole universe for you. With each new life, you grow and mature and become a larger and greater intellect. Just me. What about everyone else? There is no one else, I said. In this universe, there's just you and me. You stared blankly at me. But all the people on earth, all you, different reincarnations, different incarnations of you. Wait, I am everyone. Now you are getting it, I said with a congratulatory slap on the back. I am every human being ever lived or who will ever live. Yes, I am Abraham Lincoln and you are John Wilkes Booth too, I added. I am Hitler, you said appalled, and you are the millions he killed. I am Jesus, and you are everyone who followed him. You fell silent. Every time you victimized someone, I said, you were victimizing yourself. Every act of kindness you have done to yourself. Every happy and sad moment ever experienced by any human was or will be experienced by you. You thought for a long time. Why, you ask me, why do all this? Because someday you will become like me. Because that's what you are. You're one of my kind. You're my child. Whoa, you said, incredulous. You mean I am a god? No, not yet. You're a fetus. You're still growing. Once you've lived every human life throughout all time, you will have grown enough to be born. So the whole universe, you said, is just an egg, I answered. Now it's time for you to move on to your next life. And I send you on your way. So yes, is this a question? Interested in knowing about salvation or end of life? Okay. Um, so this is, if you must have noticed, this story brings out a lot of questions. Is there anyone from whoever's listening? Is there anyone who has absolutely no questions about this? So we all have a lot of questions whenever we read something like this. Um, so this is something that I have thought about for a long time. This is something that I have done a self inquiry into. And maybe in this discussion, we have like 9 minutes. In this 9 minutes, I'll probably try to illustrate the kind of thoughts that I had, the kind of questions that I had, and how I tried answering them by myself. So, about salvation, the end of life. For me, I think when I read about this, when I look at this, um, I imagine that this whole situation is is kind of like a Tetris game. If you must have played Tetris, it's basically different shapes of blocks which keep falling, and you just have to keep arranging them in a sequence so that you end up with filled lines. As soon as the lines are filled from edge to edge, then that line disappears. So, like that, you have to make sure that all the bricks fall, and then your screen is not filled with bricks; it is empty. So, similarly, in this case, the way I think about this, that if you keep getting born, then things are just going to keep getting disturbed, right? Like right now our population is going on increasing, and still we see violence is more. We see that there are climatic issues, environmental issues. We see so many problems around us, and so on. Granted that maybe we see those problems today because 10 years, 15 years, 20 years before, we did not have social media, we did not have that fast information travel. So we did not get to know all the bad things that are happening, which we do today. And human beings or any evolutionary species till now has been driven by fear. So we automatically point out to the negative things, and then we bring them out. So which is why we feel that everything around us is going in the negative direction. Again, this is just my hypothesis. um, Coming to this, uh, how can there be a situation where all of this is resolved? So I feel that every time you are born, you live a life, you do a certain number of things, you affect a certain number of your own experiences, so to speak, and that way you keep resolving things. You know how if we have a say solution with some pigment, or maybe brown sugar, or honey, or something like that. Uh, every time you mix a little bit, things get agitated, and the color changes, the taste changes a little by little. And there will come a time when it is all one. It will become a proper sugar solution, or it will become a solution of honey with water. It will become a uniform solution. So it's all brown, or all golden, or all white, or whatever. And this is what is happening right now. So each and every sugar crystal that you put in, it is finding its place, it is finding where it can mix, it is finding where it can dissolve, and gradually there will come a point where everything is resolved. And when that happens, then there is salvation, then there is the end of rebirth, so to speak. And in that case, we will no longer be a fetus. It would be like challenging your destiny. Do we have control over all things? I would say we have control over one life. So if today, me as a human being, as Hardik Kakkad, if I'm born today, I have control over what I influence today, how many lives I influence today. And if I have influenced 10 lives in a positive direction, then that much of dissolve has happened, that much of resolution has happened. Tomorrow, if I am born again, if I am in contact with one of these 10 people who were affected by my this life, then maybe that life will be even better. There'll be more resolved things, there'll be more positive things, there'll be more balanced things, and that life will probably affect another life. Okay, so every time you are born, every time you are influenced with by something that is around you, um, ahead in time, before in the past time, wherever. So if you are playing that kind of a game where each and every life influences another life in a certain way, and all the lives are you basically. So there will come a time where your life will be able to sort out somebody else's life, that somebody else's life will be able to sort out somebody else's life, and at one stage all the lives throughout time and history will get sorted out, and you have resolved, you have gained salvation. Humans will be reincarnated only as humans. I had heard even animals. What about corrupt people? Took away the precious lives of so many. So that is what he's trying to say, that we are all of it. The corrupt person who has taken the lives of many, like Hitler, um, maybe he was not very corrupt, he was just imbalanced. Hitler was Hitler because he wanted some kind of self respect for Germany. After the First World War, the rest of the globe, the rest of the countries had demeaned Germany in such a way, had suppressed Germany in such a way that people had lost their. How many people committed suicides? People had lost their pride, they had lost their self esteem, they had lost hope. Germany was nothing, it was a husk, an empty husk. And this is what Hitler saw. And he decided that he wanted to do something for the people. If you know, Hitler was an amazing artist. He was a vegetarian. He didn't drink alcohol, he didn't smoke. So there has to be some reason, there has to be some background. Then what about justice? So justice again becomes balance. If we speak about balance, so even in case of Hitler, the problem was a loss of balance. He was trying to do good for Germany, but somewhere he lost the balance. The same thing is with all of us. We always have good intentions when we want to do something, but then it's all about the balance. So every time you are reborn and every time you interact with a certain number of people, you will be able to sort out a certain number of lives, a certain number of experiences, and slowly the experiences in your thumb will be sorted out by the experiences in your index finger, will be sorted out by the experiences in your middle finger and ring finger and little finger. And gradually, what you experience as a hand, as a set of fingers, will be one. It will be a coordinated sensation. No one must be punished, then everyone has a reason. Um, Punishment is also an invention of whom? Whose? Who invented punishment? Who invented imprisonment? Who invented beheading? Who invented hanging and punishment? There is no concept of paradise, swarg, nark. Remember, we are talking about a story. So, if you are asking about my beliefs, so I can obviously share my beliefs with you. But right now, in this aspect, we are talking about a story. So, in that case, paradise, swarg, nark. all these things do not exist. Yes, because everything is learning. The whole process is a process of learning. Yeah, so do we have a proof that Swarg and Nark do exist? Or are they also human inventions? Or are they human interpretations of something that we know exists? We see suffering and we call it Nark. We see happiness and we call it Swarg. Not happiness, bliss. Yes, so these are all the questions. This is all, the journey of inquiry. Is it there? Is it not there? Do we see it and believe it? Do we not see it and not believe it? Not really. If you are talking about challenging scriptures, um, a lot of scriptures basically challenge themselves, because if you notice throughout history, throughout time, throughout religions, throughout myths and stories and everything, uh, all texts are open to interpretation, and it's not because they have been intentionally made misleading, although that could have happened, but that is not what we are talking about. It's just that we are intelligent beings, and we have the capability and the capacity to interpret and reinterpret whatever we see, whatever we understand. So even in especially in religion, if you see, every religion, no matter how uniform, how balanced, or how carefully cultivated it is, there are so many different sects. In Christianity, you have Catholics, you have Protestants, you have Rastafarians, you have so many of them. And then in Hinduism, you have different regional versions of Hinduism. Even Buddhism, the whole idea of Buddhism was just a journey towards light or enlightenment. The whole concept of Buddhism, or the whole thought of Buddha, Gautam Buddha, was to reach enlightenment. And that we turned into so many different kinds of Buddhism. You have Buddhism that is different in China, in Japan, in Burma, in India, in various places of India. You have a different sense of Buddhism in the people who converted to Buddhism. How can you convert to Buddhism? So everything, every religion has got so many interpretations. Right, but then those words, the words, if suppose if Buddha wrote a book, or if Jesus wrote a book, or if Sri Ram wrote a book, or Moses wrote a book by themselves, even if they write those books over a period of time, over decades, over centuries and millennia, um, do you think we'll read it the same way? That's the question. Whose interpretation should we follow? Or should we try to read it with a purity of mind and consciousness and try to understand what is being said? So, just for everyone else, if you would like to continue in this inquiry, we can continue. But this is what it means to inquire into something. When you look at things from several different directions and you're not trying to implicate someone, when you're not trying to take sides, when you're not trying to go with biases, um, but what you're trying to inquire is the whole journey, is your learning in the entire sense. So that is inquiry. So those who would like to continue can stick on. It's already 12:36. If you would like to go ahead, you can go ahead. So whose interpretation we should follow? The prophets were sent to purify the souls. But once again, the prophets are no more. So once again, the responsibility of okay, when you say their teachings are, we again fall in the same conundrum, right? We fall in the same confusion. If their teachings are, who is carrying forward those teachings? In what form are those teachings still there? And how can we figure out whether those teachings are really the teachings that were left by them, or are they interpretations by someone? See, in our entire, not entire, but in quite a few of our discussions, we have discussed how everybody's learning is different. Yes, the books are may not be the problem. Maybe the books are the same throughout the ages. But the question is again what we understand in that book and how we take it forward, what we implement, how we act. See, the whole concept of language is interpretation. Because if you break down this whole thing, interpretation, um, it is essentially your understanding based on where you are, based on what you have learned. So that is different from everyone. It was different for the prophet, it was different for the disciples of the prophet, it was different for the disciples of the disciples of the prophet. So everyone has a different experience. So naturally, whatever you learn will be different. Like in Hindi, we have the concept of the ras, the juice, the the essence of things. Whatever we read, whatever we learn, whenever we understand the essence of things, naturally when we share that with somebody else, we are trying to share the essence, but in doing so we are using words that are different. Or on the other hand, if we keep the words the same, the essence that is drawn by the other person based on the experience that they have had will be different. So for example, if you have someone, okay, there has to be some yardstick to test the authenticity. Why have we been blessed with reasoning? Yes, so that is the most reasonable yardstick. Reasoning. So if we have a sense of reasoning, a sense of pure and clear reasoning, the first thing that becomes clear is why do we have so many ways of reaching God? And if we have so many ways of reaching God, isn't there a way that is other than all these ways? If you say your way is true, then that makes all the other ways false. Who has decided that? If you decide, okay, no, my way is false, let's shift to the other way. Then how does that belief system work? If you have the strength, the courage, or the choice to discard your ways and move on to somebody else's ways, Uh, then, based on what have you decided that this way is not wrong, this way is not right, and that way is? Even reasoning can fail, so we have the concept of guidance by God on which all are dependent. Okay, so again, in that sense, we fall short on the learning and the inquiry and the interpretation. Because the moment we are choosing to be guided by God, we have to choose to be guided by God, not by God men, not by priests, not by sages, not by sadhus, not by um, anyone else. It has to be God, only God. So, interpretation will always be a problem, because that is probably the oldest and the most um, what do you say? Um, Not intense, but it's something that demands inquiry. Yes, urge for true guidance will lead to inquiry. So the moment you begin to question things, the moment you realize that there are some people who are saying that this whole Corona thing is just a fiction, it is an act of God. Fine, it may be an act of God, but in that case, you could also think of God as nature. And if this is the act of nature, nature is not doing it consciously. We are just caught in the crossfire because we chose to land up in the war, that too in the middle. We created that situation that let's put weapons on both sides and just stand in the middle. We are the people who gave power to the politicians. We are the people who gave power to the corporates who took down the forests and so on. And then we chose to stand in the middle. Let's see what happens. Let the climatic destruction happen, and let's see what happens to us. Yes, if there is reasoning, revelations will follow. But both of these are only possible when there is a pure and a clear sense of inquiry. The moment you shift on one leg, the moment you shift on the other leg, there will be no sense of purity in inquiry. And again, we'll be stuck in the loop of interpretations. So, the more you inquire, the more you discover. Again, if you look at the word also discover means something that is there in front of you. It's not, you don't have to generate it, you don't have to create it, it's there in front of you. All you have to do is remove the veil of ignorance, and that is how inquiry works. Human mind, which has identity, ego, superego, are contradictory, yes. Whereas one wants only pleasure and avoids pain, the other urges us to follow norms or standards of ethics. So this is a very interesting debate. Maybe I don't know if things align. Maybe we can do this sometime. So there is always a balance between order and chaos, and the moment we shift towards one side or the other side, we lose that balance, and then we become either more ordered and lose the chaos, or we become more chaotic and lose the order. So just a brief account of what happens on either side. So if you move into order and lose chaos, um, What will help us to reach the balance? I think the first thing that will help you to reach balance is if you observe both of them. So, chaos is like nature, and order is like creating chaos from nature. So, basically, if you want to make a house, you are creating violence, you're creating a conflict between nature and your creation. But the house is a sense of order. It has walls, it has pakka structures, it has um, a certain orientation, and everything created by you. But ultimately, it is dependent on nature. Things like rectangles and squares and all these shapes, these are things that we observe in nature. But we have broken that natural system to create something which looks more ordered to us, which is easier for us to understand and analyze. So, in this sense, we have moved from a certain sense of chaos or naturalness or nature to something that seems more ordered but is internally more chaotic. So that is the balance. There is, you know, the whole symbol of the yin and the yang. The reason why there is a white dot in the black and there is a black dot in the white is because none of them are devoid of each other. So chaos is basically a higher order, and order is chaotic within itself. When you ask someone to stand in attention, you are performing violence, because that is not the natural way to stand. The natural way to stand is the way the body is aligned. When you ask someone to march, like stand in a line and march, have you seen any of the creatures doing that? Even herds of cattle and everyone, we don't see them marching. That is such an artificial thing to do. So that looks like order, but internally it is chaos. On the other hand, if you look at nature, every flower, everything looks perfect. The reason why it is perfect is because you feel that there is an order inside it. So the only way to find balance between both of them is to understand, is to inquire, and is to be, like, just be. We want to be in the comfort zone always, but wisdom is to do what is to be done. Only a pure soul can do that, and a reflective soul that reflects on nature, mindfulness, and reflection. Yes, that is more or less it. So, just to conclude on the story, one thing that I really loved about the story is when you read it, somewhere inside you understand, it just clicks that, when we say all life is a learning. So, this is the perfect example of that. So, in every birth, rebirth, in every lifetime, there is learning. And with learning, gradually over a period of lifetimes, over countless lifetimes, the learning will balance and counterbalance each other, and then there'll be harmony. The chaos will balance the order, and the order will balance the chaos. And then this egg will be ready to give birth. And interestingly, if like in Hinduism, I'm sure this concept is there not just in Hinduism, it is there in all religions in some form or the other. Uh, we refer to existence as Brahman. So Brahman is actually, the and stands for egg. So the is the egg of existence, so to speak. And I have read about this question in not question. I have read about this interpretation or this concept, so to speak, in pretty much every religion in some form or the other. An inquiry begun with a wrong intention and no guidance can create havoc, though. Uh, an inquiry with an intention itself is wrong. You cannot have inquiry if you have an intention. If you have the intention of finding out something, then your inquiry is limited to that something. Then if there is anything that is against that something, you either reject it, or you don't find it at all, or you don't see it at all. It is beyond your consciousness. Sorry, it's beyond your conscious process. So the moment you have an intention for inquiry, it doesn't work. An inquiry has to be open, it has to be pure, and it has to be unbiased. And what is havoc? Havoc is basically imbalance. So I guess that's it. If you have any more questions, we can do the questions. Good intention doesn't mean it's limited. Good intention does mean it is limited, because okay, so this is a long debated thing. Um, what may seem good today may not necessarily work out as good in the future. So, very simple examples. Today, we are all raving about solar energy and wind energy and so on. Wind energy, quite a few people have already discarded because of the sheer number of bird deaths that it causes. So many birds die because of windmills. So, that is out of the question. But still, it is being pushed by the corporates as a renewable energy source. Now coming to solar, solar also we discussed. Today's session was highly philosophical, really. Okay. So coming to solar again, it is only now recently that we have realized that no, not realized. We have begun manufacturing solar panels that are without glass. Otherwise, up till now, all solar panels were with glass sheets. And the moment you use glass, you are doing sand mining. If you are doing sand mining, you are destroying all the ecosystem that is there on seashores. So, illegal sand mining, there are sand mafias for this. So, these sand mafias take up the sand and then they exploit it. So again, you see, our intentions are good. Our intention is to have an energy that does not destroy the planet, but in doing that we are destroying the planet. Unfortunately, what we fail to observe is no matter what action you take, there will be an imbalance somewhere else. If you don't take an action, there will be an imbalance. If you do take an action, there will be an imbalance. That is what taking an action means. It's like it's again like the solution, right? If you have a sugar solution, if you agitate it, if you disturb it, it will create the solution. If you don't disturb it, it will create a solution that is imbalanced. At the bottom, the sugar will dissolve at a very slow rate, but it will create a concentrated solution at the bottom, and at the top it will be very dilute. And if you shake it, it's going to dissolve everything. So it's the same thing with life. If you don't do it, you are still causing trouble. If you do it, you are still causing trouble. So it decides on what kind of trouble you want to cause.